He's a PhD candidate in applied mathematics, and his research aims to support domain experts in exploring high-dimensional labeled data through class and structure-aware 2D and 3D visualizations. Thank you.
Hi everyone, thanks for the introduction and thanks for receiving me today. To put on some context, we are focusing on 2 or 3D data visualization here, which is to me a underexplored domain in machine learning, but still essential to understand complex, hidden relationships in high-dimensional data, such as genomics or proteomics. Following the manifold assumption, extensive research has produced robust manifold learning methods. For instance, we have the FATE algorithm here, which was able to map single-cell data sets in the form of gene expression metrics in two dimensions, from which we can extract knowledge, such as cell differentiation stages. Yet, supervised variants of such manifold learning methods are underexplored. So this leads us to the first challenge: how to introduce supervision in this visualization task. Unfortunately, most supervised manifold learning methods are class conditional. They assume distinct class-wise submanifold geometry, potentially leading to overly separated classes. I took an example from our previous RF8 paper, which is under review in Nature, on which we compared supervised TSNE, unsupervised TSNE, and our method RF8s on 2 different trees: a clean tree spanning different branches in random dimensions, in 60 dimensions, and the same tree but with 500 additional noise features. And in supervised TSNE, we completely destroys the underlying tree-like structure of the data, because we explicitly tell that same class points should be close to each other, which creates an artificial gap between same class and different class points. In unsupervised TSNE, we have a very noisy visualization in the noisy tree, which is obvious because it does not account for noise features in the Euclidean space. Whereas with RF8, we're able to retrieve the tree structure in both clean and noisy setting. There is also a second challenge, the out-of-sample problem, because most manifold learning approaches, including RF8, are non-parametric, so they are very slow at inference. We cannot embed new data points in 2 dimensions without retraining the model, so we need to learn an explicit mapping from the high to low dimensional space for speed, and also semi-supervised support, because we do not need the labels for newly arrived points. The first ingredient, and maybe the most important ingredient to our random forest autoencoders, is the random forest proximity kernel function, which is a way to filter out irrelevant features when computing proximities between points. It operates on a trained random forest, in which you input each pair of points in each decision tree, and you look at the co-occurrence of this pair of points. If they end up in the same terminal nodes over all decision trees, then we would expect them to have a high proximity, whereas if they end up in different terminal nodes, we expect the proximity to be near 0. So this creates a unified supervised manifold, which is not overly separated between the classes, and also induce a supervised kernel representation consisting of RVR proximities between a specific instance I and all the other points in the training set, and also naturally extends to other sample points, which is crucial for our out-of-sample extension. So random forest autoencoders can be seen as a way to extend the standard autoencoder setting to the supervised setting by reconstructing RVR proximities. And the advantage here is that there is no classification layer, so we do not fall into this class conditional category. And also, since we are reconstructing supervised representation, in theory, we should obtain domain-aware latent representations, ZI, and also we have out-of-sample support, because we can remove the decoder part once the model is trained, and only use the encoder part for embedding new points. Unfortunately, vanilla autoencoders, including ours, tend to deviate from the underlying geometry. To illustrate, I took an example from the gray paper in which the authors showed that using a vanilla autoencoder, you cannot retrieve this circular pattern to embed the rotating teapot in 2 dimensions, but using a fade constraint on the bottleneck layer, you are able to. So inspired by Gray, we add a supervised geometry constraint to the bottleneck layer of our random forest autoencoders using RF fades, which is a supervised constraint in contrast to fades, resulting in a combined loss for our architecture, which will be used to train our encoder and decoder. And we have another introduced hyperparameter lambda here, which balances the reconstruction and geometric loss. Finally, we need to quantify the quality of the embedding. So beyond the standard KNN classification accuracy, which measure the extent to which classes are separable in the embedding space, we can measure domain-relevant structure preservation or supervised structure preservation via a new notion that we called structural importance alignment, which measure the correlation between 2 sets of feature importances. So the first set is classification importances, which can be measured, which is defined as a drop-in test accuracy when each feature is replaced with noise from some baseline classifier. And another set of feature importances, structural importances, we can also be defined as a drop, but not in test accuracy, in a structure preservation score. So to illustrate this, if we take S as QNX, which is a standard way to measure unsupervised embedding quality, and defined as a percentage of neighbors preserved in low dimensions, for each feature at a time, we can measure the drop in QNX by replacing feature I in the original dimensions with noise. So we have a structural importance set and also our classification importances, and we can measure the Kendall correlation between these 2 sets. Quantitatively, we compare RFAE with 13 baselines according to local and global SIA across 4 different metrics, and also in class separability through KNN accuracy. And we observe that RFAE is able to reach very high KNN accuracy while maintaining supervised structure consistency across all metrics. And the important thing here to notice is that supervised methods that reach relatively high KNN accuracy, such as SSNP or parametric supervised UMAP, in those methods, we observe a huge drop in one of those metrics. So this demonstrates the need of a non-class conditional methods to maintain structural preservation. To validate visually this table, we perform a visualization on the sign MNIST dataset, which is an MNIST-like dataset, but representing different letters in the sign language with by hand. And we observe that with our methods, RFAE, the classes are well separated, so RFAE clusters letters while capturing within and between class structures, such as variation in shadowing or hand orientations. For instance, if you take the letter C, so there is different way to represent it when you move your hands, and RFAE is able to account for that and represent this so that it is interpretable. In RF8s, we have well-separated classes, but it kind of compresses the, each cluster so that it is very difficult to observe within class variations. In parametric TSNE and parametric supervised UMAP, unfortunately, they do not incorporate sufficient knowledge or account for the wrong supervised geometry, as in parametric supervised UMAP. You have like a very sparse embedding with clusters of same class points, but they are spread throughout the embedding and not clustered together. Finally, on another dataset, image-based dataset called the Organ-C MNIST, which is a medical imaging dataset, we also observed that RFA was able to distinguish individual organs while preserving their anatomical and functional relationships For instance, if RFA is able to cluster together the right and left kidneys, the aorta, the inferior vena cava, whereas other methods, in FATES, the right and left kidneys are compressed to each other. In parametric Tessini and parametric supervised UMAP, we have like noisier representation or distorted visualization as in parametric supervised UMAP. Conclusion, so RFA is a very powerful and versatile tool for guided representation learning. It has high classification performance, domain-relevant structure preservation. It is highly robust to hyperparameters, so it was not discussed here because I was short of time, but if you're interested in knowing some more ablation studies, refer to our preprint here. It is also insensitive to feature types and scales, because this is the way random forest operates on the training set. There is also obviously the auto sample support, thanks to the flexibility of autoencoders. It's still slow, but we're working on that for faster RF gap calculations. And I want to end with a call for collaboration. We are looking for labeled datasets in biology, such as single-cell data for cell trajectory inference, or any relevant modality using potentially neural network outputs. Thank you for your attention. Thanks to my collaborators, including my supervisor, who is here today.
Thank you. Do we have questions from the audience? Then let me start with one. So you say this is slow, but it is only the part of the calculation of the RF gap distances. What would be your approach to improve this? Because, I mean, distance calculations are computationally expensive anyways.
Well, so the problem is that RF gap, random forests are not optimized in GPU, so it's mostly CPU-based calculations. There are some implementation of random forests on GPU, but they do not incorporate attributes for the terminal nodes, so it's very complicated to make it CPU available. But I think the main problem here is to account for parallelization in the calculation, because we can parallelize the calculation when using, instead of iterating over each decision tree at a time, we can parallelize this. It's not implemented in the code now, but yeah, it's some ideas.
Okay, then I will continue, because you mentioned parallelization. Would this be feasible that you actually do sort of the distance calculations on different processes even? Because then I might have something for you.
Okay. So what do you mean exactly?
Well, are the gap calculations sort of interlinked between all the samples? Because then you have the problem that if you, for example, distribute samples across different processes, you sort of have to communicate. If you have a similarity-based metric that you want to calculate, that's difficult. But if you can sort of parallelize just the random forests themselves, that would be fairly easy to do.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, I think it is very proper to the RF gap proximity measure, because when it's not the only RF-based proximity measure. There is the standard RF gap accounts for the out-of-bag and in-bag status of each training points. So this makes it more difficult to balance memory and computational complexity. So it's not just like we compare the terminal nodes of each training point. We also need the masking matrix that is potentially very high dimensional. So yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky. Okay. If there are no further questions, thank you again.